Hey, welcome back to XR at Work. We're sitting here in December of 2024, and it's like Christmas has come early, man. I got my friend Robert on the podcast today. Robert, how are you?
Doing well, Sky. How about yourself?
I'm good, man. I'm good, man. I love our conversations and the meals that we've shared and the talks that we've had and the laughs that we've had. You're uh you're one of my favorite people in XR, man, and I hope you know that, buddy.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it, and thank you for having me. It's an honor to be a part of the podcast. Appreciate
No,
it.
man, no sweat. It's good. So XR at Work, for those just joining for the first time, we're a community of extended reality practitioners. We put immersive emerging technologies into industrial environments. Sometimes that's manufacturing like Robert and I work in. Sometimes it's aerospace or automotive or oil and gas. A lot of different industries, but we're a community of people sharing experience and support and encouragement with each other around augmented and virtual and mixed reality. And I can think of no one better to have this conversation with than you, my friend. You and I are part of this community, and we have been for a while. We had an interesting talk yesterday. We have these monthly XR practitioner calls, and we had, I don't know, 10, 12 people like us from around the different industries that do XR. And we got to talking, and it seems like there's a lot of success being realized by XR in different industries, but there also seems to be a fair amount of kind of stalled adoption or stalled scale. Maybe some people experiencing um, pilot purgatory. I've heard that term used. What's this been like for you in your day job? Have you broken through that? Are you scaling, or are you still kind of stuck, or is it kind of depends on the situation? What's your take on this, man?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it depends on what scenario you're talking about. When you talk about scale, I think scale is going to be a continual process, right? You can have one great, idea, use case, and it's going to fulfill that, but then, it's on to the next one. It's always that next use case, and what does the ROI look like? So, I think we've had some success, but I think it's always going to be, I don't want to say an uphill battle, but a battle that you're going to have to always face, as far as when it goes to scale and adoption.
So, how long have you been in XR in your role?
Man, I've been working at XR almost 6 years now. You
6 years, so
know,
just
so,
about a half year longer than me. Did you think it's a little bit of a loaded question because I thought this was going to be the case, but did you think that it was going to be just this is so cool, everyone's going to love it, and I'm just going to sit back and I'm just going to ride this train, man? Or are you surprised by how much ongoing work it takes to keep that
well,
garden tended?
to be honest with you, I was a naysayer at first. I wasn't
You
one.
were.
Yes, sir. I was not a huge proponent of the technology. I was like, it was a little bit gimmicky until I was actually, a part of that development process and I saw some of the benefits that it reaped. Now, once, kind of saw that light,
Yeah.
for lack of better words, I thought it was going to take off a lot quicker, and I think, we've had some early on successes with, the COVID pandemic, from remote assist. I think that was a real proponent for, XR, VR, and extended reality and the headsets, in manufacturing. But as that's kind of tapered off a little bit, I think that, we're starting to realize that to your point, that's going to be a garden that needs to be tended, so for the foreseeable future.
I think about this, man. Do you feel like maybe it's a little bit kind of there's R&D money and there's some tolerance in enterprise for trying new things, but at some point it has to start paying its own bills, right?
So
And when it kind of crosses over that, I guess it starts to be looked at as okay, this needs to start bringing some value, or it's yet another thing we've tried, that hadn't worked out. I mean, have you seen that? Is it different conversations now than when you first started?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that we learned, or well, that I learned early on in the XR journey is, having the right people in the conversation early on, especially your sponsors, kind of set those expectations, understand, what you're, a well-defined experiment, I would go as far as
Mm-hmm.
saying, understanding what you're trying to accomplish, do you have the right people in the room? Do you have your sponsors? Of course, they need to be a part of the conversation, But I think everybody that's worked in XR understands, IT plays a really big part
Yeah.
in being able to connect a lot of these capabilities, having them in there, as well as the end user and the use case, have them a part of that conversation. Let them help you tell what the problem is. And once you have that well-defined use case and you can have those KPIs uh, established, then that's when you can have those early on successes. And when you have those successes like that, and that well-defined experiment, that kind of then bleeds over into the next use case, and you can start building off those foundational pieces.
You
But
know,
that's
I
what.
I tell people this all the time. I mean, you and I are both guys from the South, man. I think South Carolina, because it's got South in the name, will consider you to be part of the South, like Georgia. But I, uh, I think I tell people all the time that, especially down south, man, we have some of the best conversations I have are with guys from the factory or guys from the mills on the tailgate of my truck in the parking lot, eating a barbecue sandwich or just chewing the fat. And I mean, you guys got barbecue in South Carolina, right? I don't know.
Some we got some of the best barbecue in
I don't
South
know
Carolina.
what y'all are doing up north there, but I
Mustard
think
based barbecue.
I think some of those conversations, man, it's like I learn more talking to guys from the factory, like I say, on the sitting on the tailgate of my truck than sitting here in my basement trying to dream up use cases. I think you really got to get out shoulder to shoulder with people. Would you agree?
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, if you give end users the opportunity and you ask, I think part of it is it's almost like an art. You got to do some of that probing questions. But if you ask those right questions, like, what's giving you heartburn? What are
Yeah.
some of the problems that you're seeing on not only the shop floor, but in some of your processes, learning and development, R&D. We've even gone and branched out into environmental health and safety. So
Mm,
if seeing some of these pieces like, what are the gaps? What are some of the problems that you're seeing? You ask those questions, and they'll tell you, and they can help you. Matter of fact, they'll even help you stand up your use case. Like we had this problem in, say, this particular area of our manufacturing environment. This is the thing that we're seeing. It takes people X amount of hours or X amount of days, weeks, months to get a level of proficiency to where they are able to work autonomously, right? So asking those right questions and being, look at the end user, have them in mind when you have some of these conversations, man, and they will tell you the
yeah.
hard part.
Yeah.
So
You
I think
you talked about stakeholders, you talked a little about IT. I call these snakes in the grass. They're going to jump out and bite you, device management, legal, IT, sometimes L&D. What other kind of groups, I mean, have you had success or had some angst dealing with, as like I'm in corporate IT, so of course I think corporate IT is not it's not a tough one for me to break through. But I
mhm.
mean, what are some of the groups that you've had to have some long conversations with or really prove some value to get them on board as part of your rollouts?
I think that's a two-way street, and that's a two-way question. To be honest with you, some of the times, operations, they're the
Mm,
ones that's going to benefit from the tool 90% of the time, and that's just me with making an assumption of that number. But a lot of the times, operations are the end users that are going to be the ones that's ingesting, the VR sims, the AR sims, and the technology. Um, Helping them understand, because there's, I think, a piece that's sometimes missed is the communication between, some of the support capabilities that you were talking about and the end user. Because some of the conversations, even myself, you get caught up in the technical jargon,
yeah.
and they're sometimes the technicians are like, okay, I understand I hear what you're saying, but help me understand how that's going to benefit me. So, the benefit from the operations of how it's going to help alleviate some of that heartburn that we talked about early on, but then also being able to have that conversation with your corporate, your stakeholders, the IT, and saying, okay, well, this is the problem that operations is seeing, and this is the problem that we're trying to help alleviate, and be able to have that almost bi-directional communication
Mhm.
with the two to help them level set some of those expectations.
One of the things that came up on the call yesterday, man, to that point was I think it was Mark said he was talking about how you just get people trained and then they either best case move to a different department or worst case, they leave the company and you have to kind of get buy-in from their replacements, right? And I know, right now it's tough out there. A lot of people like us are in companies like we work for where there's some layoffs or there's some shuffling around of people. Maybe people looking to make more money, going to different companies. Do you is this something you face a fair amount of, Robert, is having to go, yeah, I just got the head of procurement bought in on this. Now I got to go turn around and go sweet talk, his or her replacement. I mean, is that a real thing for you?
Absolutely. I laugh, sometimes not to cry, because,
Yeah.
like I can connect with that. Um, especially in our roles and in the business that we're in, there's always going to be some kind of attrition turnover, not only from those that work in the capabilities that we're talking about with XR, but also, on the shop floor itself. So once you find those champions and you've got them to a point, say for instance, the champions that are going to help you spread the scale or adoption throughout your organization, once you've gotten them to a level where they can sit there and be able to articulate that to others
Yeah.
and help you voice that, and champion the organization, they move on to other organizations or move different roles in your organization.
Yeah.
So that's an ongoing process, and that's the things that I think we're at right now is trying to put processes in place so you don't necessarily have to start from ground zero again,
Yeah.
right? So you can have maybe some documentation or literature to help get to that individual to help understand some of those technical jargon
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
headsets or some of the vendors and stuff like that nature. Give them that step up to
Yeah.
be able to get to that point to where you're able to have them in the position to help, you know, build that capability.
I've said this before. I'll say it again, man. The technology is the easy part for me, maybe for you too, man. I mean, now I'm a career technologist, but the tech is not tough. The tough thing is the relationships and the people side of it, and understanding who you're sitting across from and kind of what they care about, and how you calm some of their fears or concerns. That you're not going to go open up holes in the firewall and have a ransomware attack. I think it's the people side of it, right? Which I can't imagine you have a hard time with that. I mean, you're a very personable kind of a guy. Do you come from a technology background?
Not at all. I come from an
Okay.
operations background. So, I was very fortunate to have people that helped me understand the technology. I took some courses on my own to help understand the technology even more. But, I think, I think that's where it kind of helps me understanding that operations background, how that technology can help individuals there on as the front end workers and be able to say, this can benefit you, because at the end of the day, that's what we want to do. We want to help people be better, more effective and efficient in their jobs, right? And we want to use technology for that. But it's sometimes, and I say that is sometimes you can have technology, but you can't put technology in place just for the sake of technology. I've seen that happen, time and time again. And, every once in a while it works. But for the most part, if you don't have that problem statement to help solve an issue, then it becomes an issue in itself.
Hey, so what about this? We've talked about this on this podcast a couple of times, and this is one of my favorite things to kind of chew on for a minute. How often do you get somebody that comes to you and says, "Man, what I need is I need me some of that AI," or "Man, I really need me one of those 360 workflows on my goggles so I can use it, in the factory floor." It's like, okay, let's not jump to what you think I should give you. Let's start with that problem statement. Is that a common? It's a very common thing in our factories.
Absolutely. And, take for instance, we had, the space that I kind of lean a little bit more toward is VR, right?
Okay.
That's where I started, my XR journey, started going to AR a little bit. But, for VR, people come to me, oh, I need a VR sim for this, a VR sim for this.
Yeah.
But, you know, you need a VR sim because you want to train somebody or get somebody up to speed on a HMI. Like
Mhm.
that doesn't really bode well in VR, like the human, I don't, VR is hard to have somebody be able to show proficiency at pressing a button,
Yeah.
what VR excels at is the things that you're going to do that's tactile. You
Yeah.
got this, and that, the other. So yeah, sometimes, you have to be that person that kind of says you don't want to, stamp out the enthusiasm, but
Yeah.
it might be the mode might be different from VR. I love
Yeah.
where you're looking at, but VR might not be the best one to go
Yeah.
with.
Let's start with the problem statement and then we'll get to what solution might be the best fit. But let's not just start with a solution without understanding what it is we're trying to solve.
Absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
that's a common occurrence.
Yeah, I think so too, man. And I think it's but I think it goes back to it just takes a very human approach. You got to be a good listener, you got to ask questions, you got to be willing to push back on people a little bit and say, well, I get what you're saying, and there's several ways to skin that cat, but I mean, let's take a look at what your issue is, and then we'll figure out how we're going to do that. I had a call this morning, the guy that calls and says, I want that headset that I saw at that other mill, and it's like, okay, tell me what headset you're talking about, right? Because there's several. What other mill you talking about? I'm looking at my dashboard trying to see what mill he may have traveled to, and what headsets do we have deployed. Ends up being he wants a 360 tour of his mill. You don't need a headset for that, right? But he's bringing in the HoloLens and AI and Apple Vision Pro. It's like no, we're just going to do a 360 if that's what you really need for your training. So a lot of times it's easier than they're making it out to be. But you got to be patient. And you want to be caring and understanding, right? We're
Mhm.
very we're very kind, conciliatory people here, Robert. You and I. So
I think you hit on something. You got to be able to listen.
yeah,
Sometimes you got to peel back that onion, to get to the actual problem statement because I want a VR sim to help me
yeah,
understand how to press this button. Okay, no, what I'm hearing you saying is there's maybe not tools there to help the individual understand, the learner to understand that, okay, you need to do this in this
yeah,
situation.
yeah,
And maybe that's something, with some guided work instructions, maybe something like AR, or maybe even, is it even a headset that it needs to go into? So
yeah,
it's almost like that decision tree. You've got the problem statement. What do I do next? Like,
yeah,
okay, this and this. And then sometimes you have to help them understand that there's some underlying factors that are there in your facilities. Like, do you have good connectivity?
yeah,
Some of those areas in our facilities don't have the greatest connectivity. And you can have the best hardware that's ever been invented. But if you don't have good connectivity,
right,
it's just hardware, right?
right, right.
Trying to help them understand that.
It's a good industry, man. I mean, I really enjoy it. I mean, what are you having fun with these days, man? Is there any new technology or anything? We did an episode a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a couple of months ago now. Dan and I did. We talked about, what else are we going to be asked to do? Because we get asked to do a lot of additional things because it's like, well, we don't know who just can do this. Give it to the XR guys. But I mean, are you going willingly into the AI arena or digital twins, or are you getting pulled into them? What's your thoughts on some of the newer stuff that's showing up?
You know what? Great question. I think that's kind of like, I don't want to say the natural progression, but when individuals are working on like cutting edge technology,
Yeah.
like XR, especially in the manufacturing space or in the workspace, the next things that come or these are the individuals that are pushing the envelope, right? So
Yeah.
they get some insight. So maybe digital twin can go along with this, or maybe AI. I'm seeing where things are starting to, we talk about AI is the next thing is, you know, my focus this year is maybe AR. I think AR is going to be super valuable for the front end worker. I think we just need the right form factors. I think we've been all wanting that for years now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether the tablet and the phone or the handheld devices, the right form factor, but AI is making its way into not only, the digital twin space, but also in VR. We've had people ask, if you have some kind of VR training, is there potential to have AI? So if an
Hmm.
individual does have a question in that type of training, that they can reach out to that or be able to have those questions cached and brought back to them at a later date. So yeah, I think a lot of these, cutting edge technologies are starting to bleed over into one another
Yeah. It's a
and
fun time to be in tech, man. I love it.
it is. Ask every day, the possible. Can you possibly do this? Possibly do this? I think it's possible,
Yeah.
but again, are we at the right time and do we have the right hardware to help
Yeah.
facilitate that? And sometimes you have to say, I like the idea, but I don't quite think we're there yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's exciting though. Love it.
We do, so we have a lot of folks that we have yeah, at least three people that watch this podcast on a regular basis, and I would imagine one or two of them might be new in the industry, starting to put. I talk to people like at AES. I talk to a ton of people who are like in their first year implementing XR in their company, and I know you talk to a lot of folks too. What would you say to people who are just starting out, man? Give us some wisdom from you with your 6 years, then I'll give you some wisdom from me with 5.5 years. And what would you say to someone just starting out, man?
First of all, shout outs to AES. That is a
Yeah, oh, yeah,
great show. I've learned so many things there and made so many connections with that.
yeah.
Um, I think a lot of it starting out is, humility. Understand that there's a lot to learn and you're not going to be able to grasp it all at one time. It's almost like a sliding, scale for you learning on the XR. Um, be able to lean on the network. You don't have to solve all these problems. A lot of the problems that you're facing as somebody that's starting out, a lot of people already, had to face them. Don't be afraid to ask. And that's one thing I want to say about this community. The XR community, they're very seldom. I can't even think of one time where I've had an issue that I've reached out to you or some other folks that are in our community and said, hey, bounce something off of them. Like, have you had this issue? If they have it, then they can put you in,
Yeah,
connection with someone who has had it, but they're
sure.
always willing to share the information. Humility, understand that, it's going to be an ever evolving space to work in. And just make sure you have, well, I don't want to say make sure you have, keep in mind the people that are going to be required to help you have this as a capability within your organization. It's multifaceted, right? You're not going to be able to do this alone. Scott and Robert can't do it alone, right?
That's right.
IT, HR, you're going to have operations, and there's going to be subsets of those, compliance, legal. And there's a lot of people that, are involved in this conversation to be able to make XR possible. Have them engaged early, and keep them engaged as you sit there and progress throughout your journey, making sure you're dotting those I's and crossing those T's and be able to have everybody in that conversation. If
Well,
that's advice I would give to people.
well, it's got to be good advice, man, because whatever it is you're doing, man, it's working for you. So kudos to you, man. That's awesome. I know you guys have a long-standing story of success in implementing XR in your manufacturing facilities, and so good for you, man. I think it's great that we do have this community. We have a group of people that come together, men and women, help each other out, share best experiences and case studies and help guide each other and just support each other. I haven't always seen that in IT, but it is encouraging, and you're an important part of the community, Robert. So I appreciate you, man. Um, you're going to keep cheering for the Gamecocks, South Carolina. All right, I'm going to keep cheering for Georgia, and we can still be friends, man. We should rename this Two Southern Guys podcast, man. Um,
And don't threaten me with a good time because I'll do it, Scott.
I know you will. I know you will. Maybe next time we'll have something to talk about after the bowl season, man, and we should just do a podcast, not even about technology, just about college football, man. That may be our new calling because I know that seems like all we ever talk about when we get together, man.
And the SEC, man.
That's right, man. That's right. Well, I appreciate you, man. I'm glad you came on today. Thank you. Please come back. Oh, people need to hear what you got to say, man, and I'm proud to be your friend.
I'm proud to be your friend. I'm proud of what you're doing with the XR at work, man. And keep spreading that message and make our community even stronger about the message that you're putting out, man.
You bet,
Appreciate it.
man. We'll keep it going. Thanks, buddy.
Take care, Scott.
All right, you too.